Hi, everyone. On February 8th, I had the opportunity and privilege to sit on a roundtable discussion with Minister Filomena Tassi, the Minister of Labour here in Canada. I was invited to speak at this roundtable by the Canadian Women's Foundation and the Rosa Project, and our focus was on the issue of sexual harassment in Canada as a whole, in the workforce, and my role was to talk about our research in the charitable and nonprofit sectors. The session was closed to the public, so I wanted to film my comments and share them with you today. Thank you, Minister Tassi, and everybody for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Liz LeClaire. I'm a professional fundraiser based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm an advocate for gender equity, diversity, and I also am the chair of the Association of Fundraising Professionals Women's Impact Initiative. On January 2019, on the heels of the Me Too movement, I wrote an op-ed for CBC News about being sexually assaulted and sexually harassed by a donor. I wrote about how the donor put his hand up my skirt at a dinner that I hosted in Toronto. I never reported it. In follow-up articles for my industry, I revealed I was also harassed by a male donor, a very wealthy and prominent member of our community here in Halifax, for close to 5 years. During that period of time, I was subjected to sexualized comments and suggestions by email and in person, and I never reported it. My story made waves in the charitable sector and prompted many of my peers to come forward about their own experiences. Buoyed by the success of the article and probably naively optimistic about bringing these men to justice, I embarked on the journey of reporting this harassment to my former employers and filed a human rights complaint. What I discovered and what has been shared with you today by everyone at this table is the glaring lack of centralized resources for survivors of sexual harassment here in Canada. Like the arts sector and many other highly feminized sectors that are boundary spanning professions, the charitable sector often places young, ambitious, and enthusiastic young women in contact with powerful, wealthy, and influential older men, often with little or frankly no training. This is a fertile breeding ground for harassment and abuse. In 2018, a survey was done by the Association of Fundraising Professionals that showed that 1 in 4, or 25% of women in our sector reported being sexually harassed on the job. Of the 25%, 95% reported that the harassment was done by a male board member or a male donor. In 2020, AFP has expanded that survey to 15,000 of its 30,000 members in North America. The results are yet to be released by AFP Global, but we know that the results are tangibly higher when those who are presented with examples of sexual harassment are able to report on them. So if the numbers are this high, not just in my sector, but others, why are people not reporting? Because the cost of reporting for survivors is so high. In reporting my experiences of sexual harassment, I have faced significant stigmatism, threats of legal action, and have faced reprisals from many people that I have reported to. Organizations and boards are fundamentally established to protect themselves, and in doing so, they do so much harm. They remain uneducated or perhaps willfully ignorant of the harm that they do to survivors of sexual harassment. In her Power Gap series, reporter Robin Doolittle highlights how the system for reporting sexual harassment is broken. Without consistent and constant education of employers and staff, anti-sexual harassment policies are doomed to fail. The lack of resources available to survivors in this country is abysmal. The human rights complaint system is not easy to navigate, and organizations counter complaints with threats of legal action and intimidation. Survivors are often asked to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to receive settlements. The lack of resources for industries like the charitable sector are so sparse that I started a movement called the National Day of Conversation. This day seeks to raise awareness of sexual harassment of frontline fundraisers, but we are a small group of volunteers with limited resources. We have limited reach and limited impact. This must remain a priority for the government to fund to really make a difference. I would call on the federal government to invest in resources like Rosa to create a one-stop shop for information and guidance for survivors of sexual harassment and sexualized violence. The power imbalance between the survivor of a sexual harassment and those who work to silence them is immense. This is on the scale of David and Goliath. but David has no sling and David has no rock. Moving forward, the power needs to be in the hands of those who the system has continuously failed and not in the hands of those who can afford to hold power over the system. A better system for reporting, anti-harassment legislation, more consistent application across the country would be a meaningful acknowledgement that women in the Canadian workforce in all industries are valued. Thank you.